there, slingers. Welcome back to another Wordslinger podcast. I'm glad to have you here. I'm talking with someone who's become a good friend of mine over the years, and that's Grant Faulkner. You may remember him from NaNoWriMo, but he's moved on, and we're going to be talking about that and more, so stick around.
It's the Wordslinger podcast, where story matters. Build your brand, write your book, redefine who you are. It's all about the story here. What's yours? Now, here's the guy who invented pants optional, Kevin Tomlinson, the Wordslinger.
Wordslinger.
This segment of the Wordslinger podcast is being brought to you by me. Now, if you'd like to support me and my work, this podcast, whatever else I'm doing, you can do that best by going and buying one of my books or a whole bunch of my books. Go to kevintomlinson.com/books, where you'll find an entire library of things waiting for you to discover. Go find your next new favorite read, and you'll be helping me out, which means I can continue to help you out. Well, I am Kevin Tomlinson, the Wordslinger, and I am really happy you're here. I am kind of doing a little tour right now where I'm kind of going out and finding a lot of the people I've already talked to on the show over the years to kind of catch up now that the show's relaunched. I have a secret agenda, by the way, but you're going to have to wait to find out what that is. But I think you'll appreciate it. Nothing to do with that secret agenda right now, though, is this conversation with Grant that I really enjoyed. There's a lot that he is going into. Some of the work he's doing in television is kind of impressive. He's got another thing coming up that's kind of we'll talk about it in the episode, but it's about essay writing, and that's something I'm keenly interested in. I am just thrilled to be able to have people like Grant in my life. We have this weird, parallel life. The two of us have done quite a bit that is very similar, right up to and including leaving the things, the work that we were most known for. So, that we talk about that too. So, I'm not going to keep you from this interview. You're going to want to dive right in. So, thank you for being here. Jump in, listen to this chat with Grant, and come back on the other side, and we'll wrap things up, and I'll see you there. Well, I have to say, I'm always thrilled to have a chance to talk with today's guest, Grant Faulkner. You probably remember him. If you know him at all, it's because he was on this show years ago now, Grant. A long time ago.
Years ago. If people know me at all.
If they know you at all. You probably more accurately know him as formerly of the NaNoWriMo organization. He was the face of that for quite a while. What was your official title there, Grant?
Executive director, and I was there for 12 years.
That's a long time to be anywhere. But
it really is.
A nonprofit.
It is. These days, I think, 12 years. I don't know.
Yeah.
Long time. It was good. It was a good time, but a long time. So time to
you've moved on now.
Move on. I have. Yeah.
What are you doing now?
I am doing some stuff that I'm very excited about. One, I'm writing, always excited about that, but I've always been a writer. And I've got some new projects, though, some new business projects related to writing. My basic mission in life is to help people tell their story. Yeah. So I have my podcast, Right Minded. We just had our millionth download recently. We've been on for 5 years. And so I'm doing that and writing books. And then I'm starting a memoir writing project, which is vast and big, and I have really high hopes for it. I think it's going to be really cool. And we are in the beginning stages of building it, so I don't want to say too much, but I'm hoping that we'll launch it in January.
Excellent.
So it's got a lot of different components, and similar to NaNoWriMo. But even going deeper and bigger in some ways, like we all have stories of our lives to tell,
Right.
important stories. We all have that, many, many
Yeah.
stories. And so the project's really designed to get those personal stories out in a lot of different forms and help people put them in the world in a lot of different forms, because there are a lot of different ways to do it. Like the idea for the project essentially came about when my father died,
Mhm.
and he wasn't a writer, but I just kept thinking, if he only would have written 5 or 10,000 words, how precious those words would be,
Yeah.
if I knew something more about his life. And so he's kind of who I'm thinking of with this, is how do we reach those people who maybe don't think of themselves as writers, but how can we help them write 10,000 words
Yeah.
or maybe 50,000 words, who knows? But the idea being that we can help them write those words and then, possibly publish them, self-publish them in some way, so that they can give them to their friends and families. But like NaNoWriMo, we know that people write their stories for a whole bunch of different reasons. So we want to be there to guide them and help them, no matter what
Yeah.
they want to do with their story.
That's excellent. I've been doing a lot of like essay, really in that vein. I've been doing a lot of essay style stuff on Substack.
Hmm.
That's very memoir.
Cool.
So yeah,
You'll
that's
have to you'll have to either give me your Substack handle or just announce it here to your podcast audience.
you can find me at kevintomlinson.substack.com. Go
Cool.
right there.
I will
That
subscribe.
shameless self
Because
plug.
yeah, oh, you got to do the shameless plug.
Yeah.
I'll do a shameless plug too. I have a Substack, which I love. I mean, I write more about the creative process and writing,
Yeah.
but there's also some personal essay kind of touches in there. And so my Substack's called Intimations, a Writer's Discourse.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'll
but I
make
think
sure
the
that
URL.
gets into the show notes so that we
Cool.
can, yeah.
I really like it. Yeah, I find it very meaningful to write it.
We will have to follow each other and recommend each other on Substack. That's
Exactly.
a thing you do on Substack.
Exactly. Yeah. I like it. I
Yeah,
like Substack a lot, actually.
I do too. Yeah, it's been a
Yeah.
great platform for me. And you and I, we've talked about this a lot too, is that we're kind of parallel in a lot that we have done and that we are doing. And
And to think that there are parallel universes out there where there are other Kevins and Grants doing parallel things.
doing something, yeah, and they've both gone in a completely different direction, but both at the same time.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I like me, it's sort of hard to escape the gravity well of wanting to help authors. Like I feel like I've done a lot for the author community, so I've been trying to pivot. I'm not leaving them behind.
Time to take
by
care
any
of Kevin.
stretch. Yeah. Yeah, I'm putting my own mask on at this point, sharpening the saw or whatever, every other trope you've ever heard from the self-help community. But
Yeah.
you're still in it. That you're currently an executive. Correct me here, okay? But you're an
Mhm.
executive producer on um the show. The name of the show always blows right out of my brain. What's the show that you're
we better
working?
change. We better change the name
I
of the
gotta,
show.
no, it's my fault.
No, America's Next Great Author.
That's what
which
it
is
is.
essentially, it's not exactly this, but the shorthand would be American Idol, but for writers.
Yeah.
Except I think we want to do more in the kind of educational building community around writing.
Yeah.
Not just have it be a cutthroat competition.
Yeah.
But yeah, the premise of the show, I've been involved with it. I've lost track, 3-4 years, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think of the show as having 3 acts, and the first act is pitching your story with these events. We call them pitchapaloozas. They're hosted by 2 people, the book doctors, Ariel Eckstadt and David Henry Sterry, and they've been doing these for like 15 years or so.
Yeah.
And what you do is like they'll go to a bookstore in your hometown and invite people to come and pitch their story. And I think they get a minute or 2. And anyway, they'll hear like 20. It's amazing how many people have a story to tell you. I mean, I shouldn't say. I know this because I worked in NaNoWriMo, right?
Yeah.
But it's still amazing that you can fill up a bookstore with people who want to pitch their stories. So anyway, David and Ariel will have 10 or 20 people pitch their stories. They'll give them really fun and helpful feedback, and then they'll pick a winner. And their winners, their traditional format is to then introduce that winner to an agent or editor to help them develop their story further. And they've had, a bunch of people, publish and become bestsellers as a result. So the first part of the show is hosting these pitchapaloozas in like 6 different American cities and have a winner in each city. And we're talking about cities that are less likely places for writers. We want to open up the gates. We want to crash the gates, really, of publishing, which are very narrow and very tightly locked still at this point.
Yeah.
And so we actually, I'll tell this story later, but we did a whole pilot in Newark, New Jersey, where we did exactly this. We received 1,000 pitches by video, and we chose 100 to invite to Newark, and 80 of them showed up, and we had 20 people pitch. And so the winners, just going back to the story, the winners will then be locked up in a writer's house for a month to write their novel and create all sorts of drama.
But Grant,
as people do.
How could you possibly write a book in just 30 days?
I still get asked that question. I still get asked that question. Yeah. So it'll be fun because the writers will be learning how to write a book, and they'll be writing a book, and they'll be doing it with each other. And we have all sorts of challenges for each show for them to complete. And then the third act will be more leaning into the publishing process and choosing a winner and things like that. But yeah, so we're looking for it to be edutainment, have it be fun but educational.
Yeah.
And I can't wait. I love, I came from a place where I grew up, no one was a writer. I didn't know a single writer in my hometown. I grew up in a small town in Iowa, but even a place like Des Moines, which is our big city in Iowa, what I'm touched by is now when I go back, and I think this is partly because of NaNoWriMo, there are 3 writing groups in my town of Oskaloosa.
Very cool.
10,000 people. There are 3 writing groups. And so there are all these people who have stories, and so we want to, give their stories possibilities. That's what this show's about.
I may have to, I think you've inspired me. I may have to go back to my hometown and first see if anything exists, but maybe I can help create the Wild Peach Writers back in Wild Peach, Texas, and see if I can,
Wild Peach, Texas. That's irresistible.
You got to do something with that. Is that just not perfect? And there's not a peach tree within 100 miles of that place, not wild or otherwise.
Even more perfect somehow. I think that's. I don't. I'll think about that metaphor.
Is that not a perfect breeding ground for a Kevin Tomlinson though? Like this. I don't know. It just seemed right.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'll be an early investor.
There you go.
Because I'm looking to do a couple things with my hometown too. Because I would like to make those 3 writing groups, even build on them more. So
fantastic. That's
for another podcast, though.
Another podcast. Speaking of, I'll keep watching my inbox for my invitation to be on this podcast you're talking about. I'll just keep watching.
Oh, for Right Minded? Yeah.
Because clearly it's coming. I mean, clearly.
We sent several. Probably ended up in your spam filter.
Right. Yeah, that's cool, man. Yeah, that's what's great about that show concept, by the way, was I tried for years to think of how could you do something like that? And the format you guys landed on, I think, is perfect. Yeah, I was always worried that who's going to want to tune in to see people write?
Well, this is a fascinating thing because that's basically the number one critique or the feedback we receive, and that's from everybody really in some way. We've heard that from TV people, the people we've pitched the idea to, and of course we're not just gonna.
You're not just looking over your shoulder. Yeah,
we're not doing that. I mean, well, one of the rules of reality TV is it's all about the casting, and so I always tell people about the real world, and everybody was like, I don't get it. What drama is going to happen when you put 6 people in their early 20s in a house and they're figuring out their lives? Well, a lot's going to happen, right? That's what we learned. There's a lot of drama that just happens when you put 6 people together in a place. So there's that, but there's also, we're going to, TV has to be visually and dramatically oriented. So it's not just watching people write or even talk about their stories necessarily. That's why we have challenges built into the show. And yeah, it's all about the casting too, and so it is an exploration of their creative process. And I think a lot of these shows, they're different shows. Like some of the shows are based on elimination and humiliation and rejection and ostracizing people. And so a lot of negative people watch things for negative reasons, right?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we humans like to see this. But we're thinking more of the show. There are shows that are more transformational, about the transformation of a person and how they grow. And so this show is going to be more focused on that.
Good.
Yeah.
I'm much more me. This is just me, and I'm not a good target audience because I'm only one person and I can only buy so many products from your sponsors. But I am always looking for the thing that's going to encourage me or encourage others to write. So I'd much rather positive stuff, but I get it. Drama's what sells. I get it.
Well, I have a friend who is a reality TV fan, and he keeps telling me, well, you got to have the hot tub scene.
Of course. Yeah. Writers in a hot tub. I mean, I've wanted to do, and it's cliche now because a million people have done a variation of it, but I wanted to do something along the lines of comedians in cars getting coffee.
Yeah, but with writers.
Yeah, but with writers.
Yeah, I've got that same idea. I actually have it all sketched out. Yeah,
do you?
No one's listening to this, right? No one's stealing this idea.
This is the part we're cutting out.
Yeah, no, I'm not joking. That's the basis of the show. The idea for the show is that comedians in cars getting coffee. We'll talk.
Yeah, because I had a lot of ideas about it, and didn't carry it all the way through to starting to get a round of funding or anything. But I think it would be. I know so many writers across the world, really, but especially in the contiguous United States that I could. Of course, I saw myself as the host of that. I'm the Jerry Seinfeld of that. But if it's your show, we go with whoever you want.
We'll talk. We might have to even get somebody else to host. Believe it or not, Kevin, we might have to get somebody else to host.
You might, whatever.
But
I can live with it. So, man, you have so many cool things going on, man. What you stayed at? You said 12 years. You were at Nano for 12.
12 years. Yep.
12 years. So, what was it? And I assume everything was positive when you left, but. Why did you decide it was time to round it off?
I had always had a theory. My previous two jobs, I'd been at them for 7 years. And I joked I always stayed about a year too long. But I thought there's something about 7. I think even our bodies regenerate new cells every 7 years. So we're constant. It's a
different
rhythm.
Human being.
You're a different human being every 7 years. So I always had that as a target in mind. But when I hit the 7-year mark, more or less, that was when the pandemic started. And, it was just that was just such a weird time. It wasn't the time to leave an organization. It wasn't a time to find a new job.
Yeah.
So the timing was just wrong. But it did make me think about how to transition out. And it's also hard to transition from an executive director role because in that course of time, I've developed so many relationships. And so, you want to leave making sure that you're passing the baton, from all the donors to whoever takes over, so that there can be continuity.
Right.
So I didn't want to leave the organization high and dry. And so I started, I set up a framework to promote from within. And I had one employee who wanted to be an executive director. And so I wanted to promote him up to be co-executive director. I also wanted to create a more kind of inclusive leadership model and less of a top-down leadership model, which I never really did anyway. We were such a highly collaborative organization. I feel like we kind of had a flat organization to begin with. So anyway, I presented this whole plan to the board, and they signed off on it. And he was, excited to do it, but he got offered this really, really, really great job. And there's no way he should have turned that down. He did not turn it down. Okay. And so he left.
Bummer.
And so that was in, let me think, that was in 2022, the fall of 2022. And so after that, I was like, gosh, how do I leave? And I thought I just needed to put a stake in the ground and say, this is when I'm leaving. And so I developed a plan with the board in 2023 that we agreed upon like August, September of last year. And it was for me that this would be my last NaNoWriMo 2023, and that I'd help with some transition and that I'd move on. And that was really a great plan for me because, sometimes you do. I mean, it's almost like the NaNoWriMo framework in action, right? A goal and a
Yeah.
deadline as a creative midwife. And sometimes you just have to set a deadline for yourself. It's risky,
Yeah.
it involved risks, but the risks, I mean, what I find is that by leaving, I created all these opportunities for myself. And part of the reason I needed to leave too, beyond just being there for 12 years and wanting to leave and seeing, wanting new opportunities, also wanting somebody fresh and new at NaNoWriMo, um, is that I just had all these projects. And
Yeah.
they started out as small side projects, but they grew and they needed more and more attention. And things we haven't even talked about. Like I have this whole literary journal, 100-word story, and I've got books, and I've got, I'm beyond the memoir writing project. I'm starting this Flash Fiction Institute, like this hub for flash fiction online, this hub of flash fiction learning and classes. So just a lot of things going at once, and there's no way I
Right.
could do that with my day job.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very similarly, I mean, I was at D2D for 7 years. That's 7 years that you talked
Mm-hmm.
about. And
Mm-hmm.
just kind of I got a little burnt out there toward the end because I was doing a lot for them and a lot for me and a lot, I was pulled
Yeah.
pretty thin.
Yeah.
But it was time. I think it was actually just like you. I think it was probably actually time around 2020
Mm-hmm.
because we were on the road, we were doing the van life thing,
I remember that.
and yeah, and we started doing that show like every day for like 3 months, and I pulled that off somehow in a van, you know, with barely any internet connection sometimes, but we pulled that off, and that showed me a lot about what I could do, what I was
Yeah.
capable of doing, but it that did contribute to some burnout. I'm not gonna lie. So
Yeah.
yeah, I
No, that's
probably
where I was too. I mean, it's always a possibility, the burnout, the working too. I mean, I'm a workaholic,
yeah, same.
unapologetic.
Yeah,
That's when I'm at my deepest peace is when
yeah,
I'm working. So I'm not averse. I'm actually not averse to burnout, but you don't want to reach that stage of being just totally running on fumes
yeah,
and or just not doing things as well as you can do them. And that's where I was. I had just and I'm a yes person. Like I'm not like when I get an idea or
yeah,
if somebody comes to me with an idea, I get excited. I want to make it happen. And I know I can say yes to too many things. But that's also who I am. And that's part of being creative, right?
yeah,
Is saying yes and having a tolerance for ambiguity and also just that joy in creation. And that's what
right.
I'm experiencing now. I mean, that's one thing that also um I mean, NaNoWriMo is a very cyclical job. You're putting on events. There's a
Hmm.
season for everything.
Right.
And so, which is great. It's all great. I learned so much in that job. I am so in debt to my time at NaNoWriMo for I've never grown so much in a job as I did with that.
Yeah.
But now it's just, I'm feeling more of that joy for new things and working with different people and in different structures. So,
What do you think is the thing you're carrying forward from Nano that benefits you most? What did you
you
learn?
know, oh gosh, I learned so much. Um, But I think, NaNoWriMo, I mean, one, it's fundamentally a community.
Hmm.
And two, like our whole premise of doing anything in the world was to do it with a sense of joy and kindness and encouragement
Yeah.
and to work with each other, emphasis on that word with. I mean, that's how we worked collaboratively in the organization. So, I mean, all of those things, I think they feed everything I do right now. And before NaNoWriMo, I was actually a very solitary writer. I
Yeah.
was only kind of on the margins of communities. And even though I was naturally collaborative, not to the extent that NaNoWriMo, what it taught me about collaboration. So yeah, I learned a lot about collaboration. I learned a lot about community building. And I also learned a lot about entrepreneurship.
Mhm.
NaNoWriMo is and always has been essentially a startup, even though it's 25 years old. And so what it did for me is like I'd been working for other people, for my adult life. And it really awakened that inner entrepreneur in me, which is an inner creator at its essence, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so most of my entrepreneurial or creative energy had always gone into my writing. And now, like, I see it in different ways in the world. And so these projects that I'm involved with now, I mean, it is that kind of, it's just all about being creative with other people and making good things happen in the world.
Yeah.
So that's my recipe. That's my business model.
Yeah.
Find good people you like, talented, wonderful people, work with them to make something.
Yeah,
You'll be fine.
That's a good recipe. Like especially if you can find people who are kind of like you, who are, driven and have energy and, can't be stopped. Like once they've
Totally
got the idea, they got to make that idea happen.
Exactly. And I mean, all these ventures I'm doing right now, that's exactly what I'm doing. People I trust and who I like and who are creative and who, it's just such a wonderful way to work. So I've been really enjoying that. And I don't overthink my partners. I was talking to somebody today. I don't go through all my LinkedIn connections and be like, who would be good to partner with on this project? I don't do any pros and cons. It's like, I trust if you happen to be in the room with me, like our idea based on comedians and cars.
Yeah.
We're in. Handshake agreement. Let's go.
Let's do it.
We're going to do it, Kevin.
Yeah, man. Yeah. So you, I assume that most of the people that you're collaborating with now came to you during these NaNoWriMo years, right? Like, or was there
coincidentally, they did, some of them. I mean, Brooke and I started the podcast 5 years ago.
Yeah.
My Flash Fiction Institute, that's a little bit different because I have this whole Flash Fiction life that's separate from NaNoWriMo. So I'm doing that with this fantastic writer, Meg Pokris and Tavia Stewart. And Tavia Stewart did work with me at NaNoWriMo. So the three of us are doing that. And the TV show, very tangentially with NaNoWriMo. Ariel Eckstedt and David Henry Sterry, the book doctors, they used to kind of do kind of pro bono things for NaNoWriMo. They'd host a special NaNoWriMo Pitchapalooza online every year.
Yeah.
And so I knew them, and they were the ones that had the initial idea, and they invited me to do the TV show with them. And then Ariel, who had retired as an agent, but she had one client, Kwame Alexander. And so he came on, and he's going to host the show, and he's an executive producer. And then he brought on Sydney White, another producer, and Bonnie. And so things just morphed one thing to another. But I guess loosely, strangely enough, I hadn't thought about it, but everybody somehow is connected to NaNoWriMo. Yeah.
Well, that's kind of the point, right? I mean, all these.
It is kind of the point.
Yeah.
Collaboration, community, creativity, all those great C words.
Are you? What about going forward? I mean, I'm looking forward to seeing you. We're trying to get you to Nink, so I'm looking forward to seeing you there.
I hope so. Yeah.
That's going to be a good one. That's a good time. Bring shorts. Bring light cotton shirts. It's probably a lot more humid than you're used to.
Yeah, that's in Florida, right?
It's in Florida, St. Pete's Beach, Florida, just outside of Tampa.
I've been in Orlando in November, and it is surprising how tropical it is in November.
In November.
Yeah.
My wife and I spent our honeymoon. This was like 20 years ago now, but I mean, we spent our honeymoon at Disney World in Orlando in January.
Oh, wow.
It got really cold, but when it got warmed up, it was humid.
I remember that. It's nice. It's fun.
Yeah.
I haven't been there since I was in Orlando in November. So, I'm hoping, that's the other thing I'm doing. I'm doing a lot of teaching, or a fair amount of teaching, and public speaking, which I love. I love going to these conferences and meeting people like you, but also, writers, and writers of all levels.
Hey,
so
wait a minute.
And you're a writer. No, I didn't mean to say you weren't. I meant that you're a writer plus.
Exactly.
You're a writer plus.
Exactly.
I'm talking about the writers who come to my sessions and stuff like that.
Yeah. So you're still kind of hooked in, like you still want that to be a big part of your work and career is the I don't know how to describe the author education side of things. That's what you're trying to
Totally.
do.
You know, I don't think there's, I mean, I'm so energized when I leave my writing classes. Like I'm energized because of what happens in them. You know,
Yeah,
I just love trying to help people be writers, you know, and
yeah,
so that takes a lot of different forms, obviously, like organizations like the memoir one that I'm working on, but also I mean, that's what I love. Like now that I'm not at NaNoWriMo, I have more time to like teach a class
right.
and, there's so many different ways to teach a class, but like, have that intimacy of helping somebody one on one.
Yeah.
It's just so satisfying and touching just to see them. Yeah, I don't know. It's just to see them learn and be appreciative of learning
And enter into this. I mean, that's why I've done this for years now. The assisting people, what I call will be authors,
mhm.
and helping them kind of figure out like where to get started. And right now I'm
Yeah.
on this like crusade because on Facebook I'm being inundated by ads from these like scammy little companies that are trying to charge people to publish, and
Uh,
the scam companies.
there are a
So
lot of scam companies out there.
there are
Yeah.
a lot out there. And they've
Yeah.
grown, man. I mean, I remember in the day when I started, there was like a couple, you
Yeah.
but they were pretty prolific, but the volume of it now is unreal. So,
Yeah.
I have this desire to kind of shift gears and just I want to focus on my own writing for a while, but I
Hmm.
can't seem to leave. I can't let people be taken advantage of, and I can't leave this community behind. I'm too like
Hmm.
too engrossed, too involved in it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
it's a noble cause,
yeah.
and
These are dreams. Yeah,
yeah, and I think when you've been writing as long as we have,
yeah,
it's it's easy to forget where you were when you began and what
mhm,
you didn't know, and how helpful some things can be, and
yeah,
that's what I see in my classes is that it's yeah, I mean, most of the students I'm working with are, I mean, they're not entirely beginners, but beginner to intermediate, more or less. So they're still learning about it. They're still, there's a lot to take in,
yeah.
and which is great for me too. I mean, it's just that beginner's mind. It's great to kind of remember what it's like. I mean,
Right.
that was the most joyful period of writing for me was the beginning and learning all of these things and reading all these different authors and just being so eager and curious.
Yeah, yeah. When you started, do you ever look back at the stuff you wrote when you first started? Have you
That's
taken
a
a
good
look at?
question. I haven't.
Really?
I have a big file cabinet of it, and
Yeah.
a lot of it's back at my mom's place, and so she's going to move to assisted living pretty soon. So I'll at least be forced to reckon with
Yeah.
where does this stuff go, even if I don't read
Right.
it. I don't know that I have. I mean, I have all my journals, which I've kept since I was a kid, and I've
Yeah.
never read any of them either. I do have a curiosity. I do imagine at some point in my life I will sit and read through everything and think about it and probably write about it and all that.
Yeah.
I right now I don't have a great need to do so though, you know?
Yeah.
Um I don't know. Maybe that would change if I actually cracked open a journal or picked out an old short story and read it. I might get curious about because that was a long time ago.
Yeah.
And I was a very different person. I totally remember that person I was, but yeah, I don't know. It'd be definitely an interesting exercise. So
I
I
it
should.
is I mean, I haven't like gone in depth, but I have looked at some old journals, some old short
Hmm.
stories. Recently I wrote a Substack post about I won a scholarship from a speech I wrote like 10 minutes before I was supposed to give it
Mm,
in high school. So went back and reread that. There's some immaturity in a lot of that stuff, but
sure,
I
there
could
should be.
see the roots of it though. That's what was
Yeah.
interesting. Like I could see some of that personality and voice was already emerging at
Oh,
that
that's
point.
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just wrote a Substack post. Substack tells you to reintroduce yourself from time to time for your new subscribers, and so I shared this story about my first summer being a writer. I'd gone to I was a sophomore in college, and I had to decide whether to be, I had to declare my major before my junior year,
Yeah.
and I was deciding to be whether an econ, it was a classic forked path, whether to be an econ major or an English major. And I very fortunately went to study abroad in France that second semester. And in
Yeah.
France, I basically sat in cafes and read expat authors writing about expat lives. And I was like, hey, this is life for me. I'm going to be a writer, sit in cafes and write.
Yeah.
So I went home to Iowa and decided not to get a summer job that year, but to move on to my grandparents' farm and take care of them. And the farm was totally dilapidated. They were too old to take care of it. And so they moved into this little apartment in this little town called New Virginia, population 99 or so. And, but my grandmother, who couldn't leave the farm or just clawed on to staying there, she'd renovated this chicken coop. And so it had electricity. It was like a one-room shack.
Yeah.
And that's where I wrote that summer. And so I went there every day and wrote. I mean, I learned these principles being a writer. I went there every day and wrote in the shack. I'd write in the mornings and read in the afternoons to kind of replenish myself. But part of the point of this story is that, like, no one was telling me to be a writer. No one was telling me I was a good writer. I don't know when the first person who told me I was a good writer, I don't know when that happened. Probably about, I don't know, it was certainly like when I was getting my MFA. So it was like by my late 20s. So
I
put
just
in
got
almost,
an email 10 minutes ago that my very first person telling me you're a good writer.
You're I know. So my thing was, like, I was just reflecting on that younger self, and I was like, wow, I was doing this with like a great deal of determination. I had no plan B in life.
Yeah.
And yet no one was encouraging me. No
Yeah.
one was telling me, it wasn't like I had a great jump shot and could dunk and was fast and athletic, in the equivalent of that in the writing sphere. No one was seeing anything in me.
Yeah.
So it was more, I think, about like what you were saying, that you saw the beginnings of your voice or the beginning seeds of yourself as a writer, but something else was speaking to you about being a writer, right? Like
Oh yeah.
something beyond any talent you had. And
Yeah.
that's what I think. I think it's like what made me a writer, what made me determined was I felt like I could become one.
Yeah.
And I don't even know if I was impressed by my own writing then. I probably wasn't. But I knew I was going to put in the years. I knew I wasn't going to quit. And so many people warn you, like when you tell them you're a writer when you're young,
Yeah.
they're like sometimes their first response is, "Oh, you don't earn any money as a writer," like, or
Yeah. Yeah.
they or, "Oh, almost no one gets published." All these negative reactions, and I don't remember I didn't care about any of that.
Yeah.
Like I knew that'd be a fact of my life for a while.
Yeah.
And whether I was deluded or just had like an accurate sense of my own determination, maybe both, I guess. You need a
Maybe
little
both.
delusion. You need some
Yeah.
delusion.
I agree. Yeah. No, you kind of have to fool yourself into thinking that you're going to be okay at this, no
Yeah.
matter what. Yeah.
Yeah. And you can develop it. Like I said, I don't think I had any natural talent. I
Hmm.
just had natural drive. I believed
Yeah.
that I could do it.
Which is effectively that's natural talent though. Like
It
just
is.
believing that you can do something. Like you talked about beginner's mind, you didn't know any better and so you just did it.
Yeah,
Like hitting the
exactly.
perfect golf shot the first time out or playing a perfect round of pool the first time you get to a table. It can happen. It
Yeah.
does happen a lot.
Well, I was just talking to Stacy Derasmo on my Right Minded podcast, and she teaches in an MFA program, and she was saying, it's not about talent because like she has so many students who are highly talented,
Yeah.
and she said they never become writers. It's because they get rejected a few times, and
Yeah.
they don't do it. They get shut down, or they don't believe in themselves enough, and so if I didn't have talent, I at least did have belief,
Yeah.
and like you
Have you
said, that
read
becomes a talent.
have you read Carol Dweck's Mindset? Have you read that
Oh,
book?
the growth mindset.
Yeah. That's
Yeah,
exactly that discussion. Like
yeah.
the people who are savants, or or they come in, they're prodigies when they start, but they become so used to just success coming so easily at this that the first time they have a failure, it wrecks their identity. So it's an ego
Yeah.
problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah,
Yeah. No, I believe in that. I believe in the growth mindset. I haven't read her book, but I've read about it
you
and
should
know
read
who
that.
she
Yeah,
is.
that's a good one. So
Yeah.
all right. Well, look, we're at time, so we're gonna
We're at
wrap up.
time,
Yeah, man. Isn't that?
but we can go longer.
Of
Kevin,
course we could.
let's push
Of
the
course we
limits. Let's
could.
see when we can.
Yeah, well, we got other lives to get to, Grant.
Yeah,
We
that's
both
true.
know this.
That's
We
true.
both have other
That's true.
things,
I'm
irons
sorry to
to
bore you. I'm
stoke.
sorry to start boring you.
Absolutely
I
not
see.
boring me. I've never once been bored in your presence, Grant, and I don't expect I ever will be. I've always
Likewise.
appreciated you. So I
Well,
appreciate
we
you a
got
lot.
this TV show to do now, so
Yeah, got to get this. Got to get this. I don't know. Now that I know that I'm not going to be the host, I don't know. Now I'm
did
not
we
as
decide
interested.
that? Did we decide that?
You said, we'll have to get another host. It has to be a different host.
Oh, well, you were trying to get me to be the host, I thought, and so I was like,
Oh no, no.
maybe neither one of us should be the host.
I was thinking, when I built this whole idea, my plan was I was going to sit down with all my writer buddies at
Yeah,
first, kind
yeah.
of like the Seinfeld model, and but we'll see, we'll
Really.
see. There are
Okay,
more famous and
we'll
talented people than me out there,
we'll
so
figure it out. It's gonna be good.
we're gonna figure it out. All right, man. So we're gonna go ahead and wrap up. Where do you want to send people to find out stuff about you and what you're doing?
Probably my Substack is a good
Yeah,
place. I write that once a week. It's free. I put a lot of time and attention into it. It's not like I just slap it out.
yeah,
But that's where I'm talking about things like classes I'm teaching and also, I mean, that's not the main subject isn't my self-promotion, by the way. It's to write something meaningful about the creative process and
yeah,
life.
yeah.
And but I also include, some little things at the end about, what, classes I'm teaching and conferences I'm speaking at and stuff like that. But that's a very secondary part of the newsletter. But yeah.
Excellent. And give it
Yeah.
to us one more time. What was it? One more time.
A horrible title. I kind of intentionally wrote a horrible I don't know why. This is like screwy side of myself. I wake up and I'm like, literally wake up one Saturday morning.
This
I'm like,
isn't challenging enough.
yeah, exactly. and yeah, I literally woke up one Saturday morning and said, "What the hell? I'll start a Substack."
Yeah.
And I don't care if a million people subscribe or two people subscribe. So I called it Intimations, a Writer's Discourse. And the reason that speaks to me,
Yeah.
it's not good branding. I know that. But intimations, it has a connotations of intimacy.
Yeah.
And also intimations are, they're thoughts. They're not like maxims or, necessarily deep, profound truths,
Yeah.
They're kind of attempts at some thoughts. And then a writer's discourse, for me, that's just like a discourse on the creative process. So it's like my self-discourse and my discourse with others. And more, I like to include things like, that I learned from other writers. Like
Yeah.
if we have a conversation here, I'll be like, oh, wow, that's a cool concept. And I'll write about that.
Excellent. Yeah.
Yeah.
I called mine The Writer. So
You own
very,
the writer?
very,
No one else had that?
I didn't use that as the address, but that's what I called how you can name the publication.
Yeah.
So I called it The Writer _ actually, which was supposed to represent a blinking cursor.
Uh-huh.
But if I ever make an animated logo, I'm going to make that blink, but I don't think people get it. That's the
like
danger
the
of being clever.
I should have. Yeah, I wish I had the writer. It's much
I
easier to
decided I was
say.
going to lean in, man. I'm like, you know what? This is about, and I did that post. It's not aimed at the writing community. It's it's specifically for my readers and people who discover me as a fiction writer and as an essayist and that sort of thing. So, I'm leaning in on that as the identity for me.
Yeah.
So,
Very good.
yeah, man.
Way to go. I can't wait to subscribe.
All right. Well, hopefully it doesn't bore you because your life is far more interesting than mine. So, all right. Well, for everyone else, thank you for tuning in and listening in on this conversation with me and Grant. Grant is a wonderful person. definitely check out his Substack. Can't wait to see the rest of the stuff that you're pulling together, man. Come to fruition. But for those of you listening and or watching, stick around. I'm sure to say something really clever at the end of this podcast, and you wouldn't want to miss that. So see you then. Well, I hope you enjoyed that interview with Grant Faulkner. He's become a good friend. I really enjoy talking to him. We probably should keep up even more than we do. So, Grant, if you're listening, we should get in a regular thing and just keep up. But I hope you found the conversation around the show interesting, and some of the other things that we discussed. It's really kind of remarkable to me how parallel Grant and I have been in our careers and our lives. I think that's probably true. That may be true for a lot of people. You know, sometimes here's what's interesting. I had a conversation recently, an upcoming interview actually, with Joanna Penn, and you'll hear that. That's coming up soon. But some of what I learned in that conversation, or some of what we discussed in that conversation, and the ideas that kind of came out of that were, well, the main idea is this notion that our careers change. There's sometimes just things we wanted very badly when we first started doing what we were doing. And somewhere along the way, that shifted and it became something new. We had a new target, or we refined what it was we wanted. I just watched a video from Marie Forleo, about achieving your dream, and she has a 3-step process, and I liked what she had to say, but she kind of went into a thing about, like, one of the steps is determine what you don't want, and there's a lot of times where we feel, I think, afraid to focus on the negative. We feel like the universe is gonna clap back if we keep our mind on the things we don't want. Like we're saying, hey, look, I don't want this, and the universe is just going to come along and throw that right in our face. And maybe if you're dwelling too much on what you don't want rather than on what you want, that could be true. But because it's like driving a race car. If you were to take one of these, they have courses for this. If you were to be trained to drive a race car, one of the things they'll tell you is that you have to look where you're going. Wherever you're looking, that's where you're going to go. So if you're looking at that wall that's speeding by, you're going to hit that wall. If you're looking over into the little field in the middle of the racetrack, you're going to end up in that field. So keep your eyes on where you're going. I think that's great advice. But it does help to stop every now and then, examine your goals. You should have your goals written down. You should have your dream written down. You should review that every day. Every single day, you should look at these goals and then question them. Is this really what I wanted? Is this still what I want? Sometimes it's a good practice and a good exercise to go ahead and say, well, here's the list of things I don't want. And then to make that positive, just flip that around and say, I don't want this, but the opposite of that, that's what I want, and so that's going on my list. And so you can identify the things that you want, the dream that you have, the goals that you have, by eliminating or inverting the things that you don't want. That's good advice. You should do that. Writers, if your goals are, whatever your goals are, whatever your dream is in this, my dream is the writing itself. I want to be successful, but that comes with defining what success means for me. In one of my 3 pieces of wisdom today, I defined success as determining what it is you have to do to get what you want, and then being consistent. Make the decision to do those things and then be consistent in doing those things. And that is success. So for me, that's, I want to write novels. So I need to be writing daily, and I need to have a steady flow going there. What's the why and all that? Well, for me, I do want to make an income I do want to support myself and my family through my own words. It's part of my purpose statement that I write and read every day. But above and beyond that, the thing that drives me in that work is crafting a good story that can express the things that I'm seeing, what I observe in the world and how I think about it, and then I hope change the lives of the people who encounter it. That's writing, that's podcasting, that's creating videos on YouTube, that's whatever work I do. It's all part of the same pot for me. So I'm a writer first and foremost and always. Storyteller, that's my dream. So whatever your dream is, and I imagine it's probably pretty similar, make sure you're writing it down. Make sure you're reviewing it as often as you can. And I recommend, I'm going to start doing this. I'm not consistent about this part yet. Every day review. I read that list out loud. My affirmations, my goals. I write down a prayer that is about, whatever's on my heart. Usually I'm trying to bless other people with that. I am asking for success. I am asking for things in that, but I'm trying to, how do I serve? That's the question I'm asking right now. But I'm going to try to get better about reading that list 3 times a day. I was doing that for a long while, but 3 times a day, reading my affirmations and my goals to remind myself of what I'm doing and why. But I think an important component is to question your goals. Question your dream. Is this really what I want? What I've learned, there's certain things that I've done that I did first assuming that this is what I want, because it was. For a long while, there were things I was doing that were what I wanted. I wanted to work with Draft to Digital, to be an influencer in the indie author community, to speak at these conferences. That was part of my journey. It was part of my dream. And I got there. And I am not unhappy with a single bit of it. I still love Draft to Digital. I still think it's an amazing resource for authors. I still think every author should have a Draft to Digital account and use it, and distribute using that. And I think D2D has the best interest of authors at heart. I will probably always believe that until they show me otherwise. But I mean, they show no signs of diverging from that route. And I loved that I served the author community. But I think now I'm in an era where I need to serve in a different way in order to feel fulfilled. Because, the same work was starting to kind of weigh down my soul. I was there. You can start to feel when things shift. For 7 years, I worked with D2D, and I had a certain perspective and a certain drive. I had certain goals, and I met all that. There's nothing wrong with accomplishing the thing that you knew you wanted to do, and then deciding to put that to rest and go do something else. That's what I did with Draft to Digital. To be just frank and honest about it, that's what I'm kind of doing with all the things that I currently do to serve my author community. I still love this community, still want to serve it, but there's changes coming for me because a lot of what I do now, I thought I'd just kind of keep going with it, but I've decided that's not part of my goal anymore, and that's okay. And the reason I'm telling you this is because you're probably feeling something similar. You might feel something similar at some point. And what I want you to take away from this is you do not have to feel at all guilty or ashamed or like you're some sort of failure because your goals changed. You don't have to feel that way. Your dream can change. Your goals can change. And you pick up a new path and you move boldly in the direction of that new dream. And that is absolutely okay. I'm not giving up on writing. writing is the thing that is just in my heart, and all forms of writing, by the way. But I think I am pivoting away from the way in which I've served my author community. I'm still going to be here. I'm still going to answer your questions when I can. I will help whenever I can. But I think it's time. It's been time for a while for me to put aside. It's like the old retired soldier has to put aside the uniform and the shield and the sword, or turn swords into plowshares as it goes. That happens. So anyway, I'm still here for now. But I'm pivoting, and I want really the lesson I want people to take from this episode is just like Grant, just like me, it's okay to move on and do a new thing, and it's not failure. You're not letting anyone down. You're not doing anything bad or negative at all. You are just continuing in this process we call life. Things change. Miracles are a daily occurrence in life if we'll stop and look at them. And one of the miracles of life is that we can change and become even greater or even more than what we were. So, went a little long here, so sorry about that, but I hope you got some inspiration out of it. I hope you enjoyed the chat with Grant Faulkner, and I really appreciate you being here. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe, all the important things. Make sure you're going to all these websites that are in the show notes. Go and support Grant and what he's doing. Support me and what I'm doing. I just, as of the airing of this episode 2 days ago, I had my new book, The Forgotten Rune, released worldwide and did well. So thank you to everyone who supported me in that. I am very grateful. If you haven't already checked it out, go and find that for The Forgotten Rune. You can search for that on Amazon. I'll put a link. There's a link probably in the show notes. You can also find it on my website. If you go to kevintomlinson.com/books, you'll definitely find that book plus everything else I write there. That is my dream and goal in life, is to write those books and do that for you, do that in service to you and in service to God. I'm telling stories. That's what I'm doing. That's what I was put here for. So take care of yourselves. Can't wait to see you next week. See you then.
Wordslinger.